50 Years a Medium by Estelle Roberts. Mistress of the Medium. Her name is Estelle Roberts. Her strange psychic gifts first manifested themselves while she was still a child. But she was 30 years of age and a widow before she allowed herself to be encouraged to develop them. From that point on, her whole life has been devoted to spiritualism. Estelle Roberts has become famous all over the world as the greatest living medium, the woman whose mysterious powers go beyond life itself. Dedicated to all my friends in both worlds. Introduction by Hannah Swaffer. Estelle Roberts will be long remembered as the most versatile British medium of her time. Her public clairvoyance is remarkable not only because of the determination with which she forces home a piece of evidence. Seldom will she accept a skeptic's reluctance to acknowledge it, but because of her dramatic and arresting appearance on the platform. In former years, her direct voice seances, attendance at which was a prized privilege enjoyed by only a favoured few, were an almost unique emotional experience that could never be forgotten by any sitter, however accustomed he or she was to physical phenomena. Why she abandoned them, I never heard. Her trance addresses by Red Cloud inspired many. She has used her rare gifts lavishly, bringing comfort to thousands and proving survival to innumerable inquirers. I first met her on Sunday when she was the clairvoyant at Marylebone Spiritualist Association service at the Alien Hall in Bond Street. Then I was deeply struck by her impressively dignified appearance, one obviously due, I was soon to know, to the fact that psychic power was beginning to prepare her for what would be a challenge to almost anyone else's nerves. Then, after she had successfully given messages with the names of the spirit communicators and descriptions of their personalities, she became the very ordinary woman she is in her private life. During the next few years, she acted as the clairvoyant at many meetings I addressed, in the Royal Albert Hall and Queen's Hall, London, the Town Hall, Birmingham, the Free Trade Hall, Manchester, and in Reading, and other towns, the names of which I cannot now recall. All of them were among the most successful gatherings of the hundreds at which I have spoken for her cause. Often it is with some anxiety that a speaker like myself, who has been emphatic about the abundant proofs of survival and has indulged a fervent oratory, awaits the beginning of the clairvoyant's demonstration. For, if he has never shared a platform with the medium, he fears the evidence will be weak and unconvincing. The medium may be unwell with a natural deterioration, however temporary, of his or her psychic powers, and so the meeting may end in an anticlimax. This has happened to me more than once, and so I fear to trust a stranger. With Estelle to follow me, I never had the slightest qualm. I could use the phrase, as the medium will soon prove to you, with the highest assurance that it would be justified. Her psychic personality invariably dominated any public assemblage at which she demonstrated. At 2 enormous meetings arranged in the Albert Hall by the Sunday Pictorial within 3 weeks, Estelle excelled even herself. I had spoken with unqualified conviction, and directly afterwards her electrifying mediumship more than proved my case. At Reading, knowing the sort of criticism the meeting might meet with the local press, I used such words as these. Mrs. Roberts tells me she has never been in this town before tonight, when I accompanied her from the station, and I have been with her ever since. That can be checked. She has had no time to copy names of the dead from any local cemetery or to arrange a conspiracy with any of the town's residents. So I issue the press this challenge. Get the name and address of every person to whom a message is given, call on them at home and cross-examine them about any possible complicity. Then print the truth, favourable or unfavourable to the medium as it may prove. I defy any reporter to do this. As I knew would be the case, I heard no more of the matter. About Estelle's voice sittings. Much of the evidence will be found in the pages following. I could write a volume. Until, in later years, a non-professional member of my own home circle developed similar powers. They were the most convincing I have ever attended. That at which Air Chief Marshal Lord Dowling heard, once again, the eager voices of some of the few who had lost their earth lives in the Battle of Britain, which, under his victorious leadership, saved our island from invasion by Hitler's hordes, was the most dramatic of them all. It was at the opening of the House of Red Cloud, the revered Indian guide himself performed the ceremony, that I first met King George of Greece, one of her many highly placed sitters. Spiritualism owes much to Estelle Roberts. It is because of my personal debt to her that I have written this brief tribute to her remarkable qualities. I should like to express my gratitude to all of those who have kindly consented to the publication of their private experiences, and in particular to my old friends Maurice and Sylvia Barbonell, whose detailed records made at the time have served to stimulate my own memory and to recall the experiences of themselves and on others, which I could not share, since I was in a state of deep trance. My deep gratitude is also to Margaret and Percy Illingworth, without whose untiring devotion this book would have never been written, and to Hannon Swaffer, who has so generously contributed the foreword. Estelle Robert. Chapter 1, 1889 to 1919. This girl must be called Estelle, for one day she will become a star. These words were uttered by my grandmother as she gazed down at her daughter's child, who had entered this world barely 2 hours before. In later years, my mother told me of this incident, for which there was no apparent reason. My grandmother had no reputation in the family as a prophetess, and no doubt would have been shocked at any suggestion that she had psychic powers. However, my father had different ideas in the matter of names, for the good and sufficient reasons that I was born on May 10th, 1889, and that we were then living in May Cottage in Kensington. He chose to call me May, and so in due course there appeared a new entry in the registry of births. May Estelle Wills, daughter of Edwin Blackstone Wills and Isabel his wife. My parents were good, kindly people, typical of the Victorian age. They had a family of 8 children, 5 girls and 3 boys. And we all lived in Kensington in comfortable but not affluent circumstances. In company with my brothers and sisters, I grew up a very ordinary and unremarkable child, with the sole exception that from the moment of my earliest recollections, I heard voices which the other members of my family could not. Though I knew nothing of spiritualism, I soon came to recognize them as the voices of the spirit people, and knowing myself to be part of them as they were part of me, I never had the slightest fear of them. My father, however, had no understanding of such things, and although he was always a just man, he nevertheless frequently felt it his duty to correct my allegedly riotous imagination by means of his leather belt. I was repeatedly told that such things were evil, and because of this, until the day of my enlightenment, I was haunted by the fear that perhaps my mind was a little touched. One of my brothers, Lionel, who had died before I was born, was among my earliest visitors. He often used to come of a morning or evening, and I would talk to him. He was then only a child, but I watched him grow through the years to maturity. He still comes to me. Other spirit children of my own age would also visit me, and I would talk aloud to them. It was hearing me speaking, apparently to myself, on these occasions, that was the main source of alarm to my parents. Looking back after long experiences of psychic phenomena, I am convinced that these early visitations were a preparation for my future work, to allow me to accustom myself to their presence and to converse freely with them all times. This is the end of part 1. Thank you for listening.